Friends, trolls, and casual YouTube browsers alike, this is your man Star Spangled Eggs coming to you guys at the end of another day, another eventful day of PAX 2013 on the East Coast, bringing you some more information about Injustice Gods Among Us. Now, if you haven't watched my first video covering Injustice Gods Among Us, you should probably do that, as it does cover some good information about the game that they haven't really fleshed out until yesterday, so it was nice. But if you have no interest in doing so, a quick reference is just that um, all I really talked about was what they said in pertinence to the combo mechanics, the fighting game engine, basically what your controller is going to be able to do for each of the characters in the game and how the controller layout and everything is going to be. Today, however, I was going to cover part 2 of my yesterday part 1, and I'm actually grouping it with what they did today because they didn't have a whole lot to say today except about the Star Labs mission mode, and that is pretty neat. But they only got like 20 minutes of streaming time, and I'll actually be showing you some good bit of the stream here. So you'll be able to see what it was I was commenting on. You can be able to see what I'm talking about. However, we do have some game facts to go over, and we're going to go ahead and dive right into that right now. Game facts number 1. 24 characters have been confirmed upon disc release. So, anybody who's been wondering, I know a lot of games like to, I don't know if you should say they like to leak, but they like to have their character lists leaked before the game comes out. This one is not that case, however, they've only said there's 24 characters, and they won't tell us who, along with 4 more DLC characters that are obtainable through the Season Pass, which is only $15. It gets you 4 playable characters, and you'll be able to get some costumes for Batman, Wonder Woman, and someone else whose name escapes me from the Flashpoint story arc, is where those costumes were based upon. So it's a good deal if you're going to be getting the DLC anyway, which I know I will. So keep that in mind. And along with stages, that was another common inquiry. They've confirmed 15 stages to pick from, but you must understand that one stage is not really the typical stage. In this game, stages are multi-tiered, much like in Dead or Alive. So, each stage is more like 2 or 3 stages per selectable stage, or what I like to call base stage. So, you're really getting more like 30 to 45 stages in all, which is pretty neat. And there's a whole lot of mechanics that are going to break down from that, and a lot of depth to the fighting game engine, but I shall reserve those details for later so that we can move on to the modes. We've got a couple modes that they've confirmed for us. They actually confirmed a specific mode called single fight mode. Actually, the fighting game community demanded that they put this in, and they actually listened to us and they put it in for us, which is very nice of them. And what it does is it allows for repeated matchup exposure against a certain character you may be having trouble with. So, say you're Superman and you can beat everyone else in the game, but you seem to have a lot of trouble fighting Lex Luthor's. Then you could actually go into this mode and just set the parameters and go at Lex Luthor until you get good at it. Sure, you could do it in training mode, just the same, but I believe that there's going to be some special things to this mode that make it a warranted change or a warranted mode. So we'll just have to see. I haven't been able to see anything yet, but I'll keep you guys posted for sure. Star Labs, I'm going to come back to that because that's what everything was posted on today, and they gave so much detail for it. It is awesome, so I'll come back to that. Arcade mode, which they've actually called Battles. It's just kind of a bland title. It's your typical arcade ladder leading up to a final boss fight and the obligatory character story end. But it's actually not as bland as it sounds. And let me tell you why, because they give you a lot of ways to play through it rather than just saying, easy, medium, hard, nightmare, or whatever a lot of the games like to do. They actually take it a couple steps above and beyond by adding a couple things. Like heroes only battle, villains only battle, speed battle, which is like a time attack mode where you have to win each fight under 30 seconds. They have something what they call bleeding battle, which is almost like a survival mode where you have to win arcade mode while losing constant health over time. So all these things, it's just the little things that make it just a little bit harder and provide a little more challenge, and overall make it a much more wonderful experience. I love stuff like that. And all of these things, including the Star Labs mode, will contribute to earned experience points counters, which will help you level up and you can actually unlock things within the game, and I will actually come back to that as well. So now let's go ahead and dive on in to what Star Labs mode is, and I'll go ahead and you'll be able to see the footage come up now. Star Labs mode is Injustice's equivalent to Mortal Kombat's Challenge Tower mode, in which it gives you, and they've actually confirmed the number of this, 260 missions on release day to go ahead and chop your way through. Now, that's a good bit of missions in and of itself, and if anybody remembers the latest Challenge Towers mode, there was quite a bit in there too. But you have to admit, in some of the games, it seemed pretty much the same. I mean, we saw poison mode a couple times. We saw and time attack. We saw a bunch of the little generic archetypes show up a couple different times for each character. What they've actually said, and they even said this in the stream itself, is that they tried to make each and every individual mission unique to itself. And to think of 260 missions, to have 260, well thought out and well done mini games, pretty much is what they are. That's pretty. That's a pretty high accomplishment. I have to congratulate that. The fact that they tried to make them each and every one unique, so we weren't, redoing the same things over and over, making it a very diverse type of gameplay. And you'll actually see a couple of the modes here. One of the modes they show off is you actually play as Catwoman's cat, and she's going through the Batcave to try to get to the end. She has to jump over lasers and avoid detection by the patrolling guards and things like that. You'll actually see that coming up in a little bit. You'll also see a mode where Lex Luthor is playing sort of a whack-a-mole kind of mini game where he has to like shoot missiles at these bombs that are floating in the water before he goes in and does like a little diving game where he has to collect air and dodge mines. Um, but of course, they also are going to have the more battle focused modes where it's going to be more like um, almost like the Weapon Master mode in Soul Calibur 2, where you're fighting with certain conditions, certain parameters. They show a couple in here. I think at the not the very end, but the last two or three missions you're going to see are going to be battle modes where, like, the one that I remember clearly right now is Superman versus Green Lantern within the Red Sun story arc. And, they fight for a little while, and then at the end of it, they get into sort of like a clash of beams, and they're trying to overpower each other. Superman using his eye laser beams, and Green Lantern using a beam he is projecting from his ring, and it becomes a button mashing thing to try and overpower the other person, and once you are victorious, then you, of course, win the mission. But even deeper than that, just, winning the basic aspect of the mission, because each one, you do like a certain thing to win the bare minimum. It also gives you other bonus objectives, just like Weapon Master mode did too. So instead of getting like a star, you can actually get 2-star or 3-star rankings, and those will of course give you more experience points, which you can then spend later. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you what you can spend these things on. Like I said before, they do attribute to a level counter, and I'm not sure what exactly your level is really going to help you with, but they have confirmed that you're going to be able to spend these points on what they call access cards, and you take them to a place that they've titled the archive, and you can buy things, and they've confirmed this alternate costumes, you can buy extra game modes, music within the game, and those are just the ones that they've actually mentioned right off the bat. So that stuff excites me. I love getting those fun little modes, especially, since we saw what could be achieved through the silly little add-ons and stuff as done per cheats of Mortal Kombat. I'm wondering to see what awesome new modes you can do just for like fun and, just a little couch co-op kind of thing. You could play with your little brother and just kind of freak him out by having things rain from the sky, or, whatever the case may be. I think that they are really on the right track with this, as I know Weapon Masters mode was my favorite thing to do, and I believe no game in the Soul Calibur franchise to be as amazing campaign as the Weapon Master mode from Soul Calibur 2. And if anybody agrees with me, please like, comment at the bottom, because on a slightly unrelated note, I want to see, since they're in the business of doing all these HD remakes, I want to see Soul Calibur 2 HD remix with online compatibility. If anybody else thinks that that should exist and that should be a thing, please comment here. I wanted to start a petition so many times, but I haven't gotten around to it, and now that I'm actually voicing my opinions and things to the public, I'm going to go ahead and throw it out and see what people think about that. Alright, back on topic, however. So, the stream that they actually show, I've only shown you a little bit of it. I'm not going to play the whole thing. And the reason why is because today, for some reason, they only got like 20 minutes of stream time. I think it was like 19 minutes and some odd seconds, actually, to be precise. But And really the only thing they showed off was the Star Labs mode. So as big of a mode as that is, they haven't talked about story mode very much, and they haven't talked about um, the training mode, at least not today. They did a little bit yesterday, and I can make a video on that should you guys want to hear about it. I know for me and a lot of my fighting game friends, it's actually a really impressive mode. They added some little things that really make it shine. And as for the story mode that they haven't said a whole lot about, I'm actually very familiar with the story. And a lot of people I've talked to actually aren't very familiar with the story, and I just wanted to say something on it real quick. Because I actually work at a game store, so I talk to a lot of people about this game, and I try and get people to pre-order it. And a lot of people, every time I ask someone, have you ever heard of Injustice? A lot more people than not will say, oh yeah, it looks pretty neat. But I'm just not a big fighting game guy. And so then my first initial thing will say, oh really? Well, do you know the story of the game? Have you ever heard anything about what the game's going to be about? And almost all of them say like, oh no, I have no idea. So let me just say a couple things in pertinence to the story because I said I would comment on it. I won't give any spoilers or anything. Actually, you know what? There may be something in here that is a spoiler, but they've actually been pretty open about it. So I'm not sure how big of a spoiler it is. If you don't want it to ruin any sort of expectations you have for the game or the story in it, then definitely just stop listening from here on out because this is what's going to take up the remainder of this video. They have confirmed that the story is going to be mainly about Superman and his decline. So what it is, of course, we know from the studio NetherRealm, they have made a wonderful fighting game story that is Mortal Kombat, and it was something that was thought to be not possible. Everybody says that fighting games can't pull off a story. There's too many characters coming from too many backgrounds. It's hard to pull them under a cohesive plot and story that actually makes sense and is enjoyable. But Mortal Kombat showed that you can actually do that while making it cinematic and a fun experience. And they've actually went ahead and they wrote up the story even before they were able to talk to DC, and they actually sent DC the story, DC Comics, of course. And DC liked it so much that now they're on like issue 8 or issue 9 of the Injustice Gods Among Us story in their comics. Usually it's the other way around, where they make the comics and then the people who like the comics decide we would like to make a game about this. But this is one of the rare instances where and the story in the game actually inspired the comics to be made because DC Comics liked it that much. So if you consider how rare of a thing that is and just kind of think about it, that should attest to how great of a story it is. They're printing comics for this thing. When it's just a $60 game, I mean, that's pretty intense. I think that's a good testament to itself. And then the story itself, and I'm going to tell you a small bit about the general plot right now. Having done some research on it, I'm going to go ahead and tell you what it's about if you don't know. Because if you do know, it's going to just seem that much more awesome to you. Alright, so Superman, like I said, is on the decline because the game starts, and if you've seen the story trailer, then you'll know what I'm talking about, where Joker is over by the bomb and he's got the trigger for it and it has 6 seconds down and he says, I can see the headlines now. Justice League fails, Clown kills millions, and he laughs. And so what Superman does, he tries to stop him from detonating the bomb and killing people, along with Batman's help. And Joker apparently had like a second trigger for it. So even though they stopped that one, the bomb blew up anyway, and he laughs. And what happens as a result of that explosion is that Lois Lane, who is Superman's love interest, and his unborn son, whom Lois is of course carrying, they actually both perish in the explosion. So as you can imagine, just like anybody else who, basically lost their wife and their soon to be born baby, he was not very happy about that, and he nearly killed the Joker just out of mad vengeance. And so what happens is he started really thinking to himself, about how the world works, where basically what happens to Joker, he gets put in jail, and this happens with every other villain. They get put in jail only to break out, kill people, cause mayhem, and do all sorts of crime just to be arrested, put back in jail, to break out, do it all over. And it's an endless cycle. It just keeps going and going. And this is one of the main gripes by any realistic person who looks at comic books is like, well, why don't they just, kill them? Why don't they give them real justice? And Superman finally says, you know what? Why don't we do that? And that's the whole plot of this game is Superman forms a regime and he's in charge of it and he incorporates a lot of superheroes and supervillains. It actually shows Lex Luthor is actually on his side in this game, even though they're mortal enemies in the other stories. Lex Luthor actually happens to agree with what Superman's going for, which is enforcing true justice. And I guess what happens is he grants him amnesty from his past actions because he joined the regime and he, vowed to be one who serves justice and everything. And at first, everybody was kind of on board with it because at first it's a good idea, enforcing true justice, and letting peace be abundant. But after a while, Superman starts sinking into the microcosms, even of the little injustices that happen outside of superheroes, supervillains, and that's why in the character trailer they even said, it made sense at first. Bad guys were finally getting what they deserved. But now it's going too far. And so that hints to us that Superman's kind of becoming more corrupt with power. And you can actually see it in his character change. He doesn't look like the Clark Kent, the upstanding, well modeled, clean shaven man. You start seeing him grow like facial hair and almost look like he's becoming, engrossed with his power and his dominion. He starts ruling man with a Kryptonian fist, pretty much. And actually, in the character or in the story trailer, you also see one of the Amazonian girls saying, mankind is incapable of self-rule, which she's saying like they can't operate themselves. We need to be dominant. We need to like rule man for them because they can't do it themselves responsibly, in her opinion. And so that's why Batman and a couple of the other heroes are finally like, all right, he's going too far with this. We need to stop him. He's just. It's more about, I guess, vengeance for his lost wife and unborn child, as opposed to really wanting to enforce true justice. And that's what the whole game's about. And the neat thing is that rather than it just being like a small conflict that lasts like one episode, we're going to see major main characters die, and there's been a bunch of pictures and different things released and allegiances made that you never would have thought. For instance, in this game, actually Harley Quinn, who was Joker's like, right hand girl, she actually has sort of in her mind figured out that everything she's been doing is leading up to this moment where she's going to answer to her true calling, which is to be a hero. And that's pretty crazy if you think about it. I haven't seen anything like that where she goes good. I know she's constantly torn between Joker and Batman throughout the comics, sort of, in a comical way, but never really making the whole shift. And in this trailer, she's actually going extra steps to defy Joker and to fight him, which is really interesting to me. So I can't wait to see how the story turns out. There's been a lot of rumors that Batman's actually going to die in this one, and I want to see if it happens. I want to see how it happens. And of course, like everybody else, I want to see the awesome fight between Superman and Batman, and there's all sorts of debate about who's really going to win that or who would win it. And of course, just the cover poster where you see Batman, raising a little bar of kryptonite and Superman shooting laser beams at him, running at each other. I just want to see what happens, what leads up to that, and I feel like the writing in this game is going to be really good because even DC Comics loved it so much they're making comics about it. I mean, come on, guys. I mean, honestly, I've actually sold more copies or pre-orders of this game by talking about the story than I have even mentioning the fighting, because I know some people aren't into the fighting game aspect of it. At least check it out for the story, rent it, check it out at a friend's house, do what you gotta do. But support this game. I'd love to see more stuff like this, especially in the fighting game community. That's all I have to say for today. I'll be back with you guys tomorrow after we hear what they've got to tell us then. Have a good night, guys.